At 7:10 a.m. in the Eastern Pacific, the calm fractured without warning when a single anomalous radar return appeared ahead of the USS Sampson, its speed unusually high, its identification system deliberately dark, and its track marked by subtle evasive shifts that immediately set off alarms inside the ship's operation center, because vessels that move fast, stay silent, and bend their course away from detection are rarely innocent, and within moments that suspicion hardened into certainty as the ship's infrared sensors caught multiple objects being hurled into the water, splashes spaced in a way seasoned operators instantly recognized as an attempt to erase evidence before authorities could close the distance, a classic smuggling signature that transforms routine patrols into time-critical operations, prompting commanders to move fast because every second allowed packages to sink, disperse, or vanish entirely. And when radio hails were ignored and more cargo went overboard, the situation crossed a threshold that demanded immediate escalation, triggering the decision to launch the MH-60R Seahawk, a shift that marked the operation's transition from detection to pursuit as the commanding officer elevated the alert posture and ordered the aviation crew to deploy without delay. Knowing the ship was operating inside a corridor long associated with high-volume narcotics trafficking, where hesitation often means failure, and just 90 seconds later the helicopter lifted from the deck, rotors biting into the air as it surged forward with practiced precision, accelerating rapidly and dropping to a low altitude to maintain visual contact while its sensors refined the target's track, reaching nearly 120 knots along the projected intercept path, a speed advantage critical against a go-fast vessel built to survive through erratic turns and sudden throttle bursts. Yet from above the aircrew could see exactly what they were dealing with as the suspect boat zigzagged sharply across the water, a maneuver pattern that betrayed familiarity with counter-detection tactics and confirmed this was no panic fisherman but operators trained to evade, discarding package after package in rapid succession, the spacing between splashes revealing an urgent effort to lighten the load before interception, until one moment changed the tone of the pursuit entirely when a discarded bundle struck the water and reacted violently, throwing up a burst of white spray that signaled chemical instability, suggesting refined narcotics improperly sealed and now dangerous not just as contraband, but as a physical hazard to anyone nearby. Information that streamed back to USS Sampson in real time and reshaped the command team's risk assessment, because unstable cargo increases danger for boarding crews and narrows the margin for error, forcing planners to consider containment as much as capture. And as the Seahawk continued to shadow the vessel, it fed a steady flow of data, speed, fluctuations, heading changes, discard rate, and chemical reaction indicators, allowing commanders to build a precise picture of intent while preparing for escalation, moving deliberately into the next phase as the helicopter activated its communication systems and issued clear, repeated instructions ordering the vessel to slow and prepare for inspection. A required step under maritime law that demonstrated restraint and lawful intent, yet the response was unmistakable as the suspect boat surged harder, its wake lengthening as engines screamed and its course twisted to complicate intercept angles, more packages hitting the water in quick succession, each splash representing evidence being destroyed and pressure mounting, forcing the aircrew to document every maneuver while commanders weighed proportional response against necessity, knowing the vessel remained underway, non-compliant, and actively discarding contraband. A combination that steadily elevated risk and narrowed options. Because in maritime interdictions, the most dangerous moment is not the chase itself, but the instant when delay allows criminals to rewrite the outcome beneath the surface of the sea. This reality reshaped the assessment unfolding aboard the USS Sampson, where the command team weighed the helicopter's live reports against the shrinking margin for control, recognizing that the suspect's persistence had pushed the situation beyond the limits of passive measures, because a vessel that ignores hails, continues evasive maneuvers, and actively destroys evidence cannot be safely boarded while still underway, making it clear that the chase itself was now increasing risk rather than containing it, which led to the decision to move beyond verbal warnings and authorize a controlled warning shot, fired deliberately at a safe distance ahead of the vessel in strict accordance with procedure, its rounds striking the water to carve a visible line across the sea, a final unmistakable signal meant to force reconsideration without harm, as the MH-60R Seahawk held position overhead to watch for any sign of compliance. Yet none came, the suspect boat maintaining speed and erratic movement as if daring the situation to escalate, confirming to the command team that cooperation was not coming and that delay only meant more evidence lost and greater danger, especially given the helicopter crew's earlier confirmation of chemically unstable cargo now entering the water, a factor that elevated the hazard for both suspects and recovery teams. Narrowing the options until the commanding officer authorized the final escalation, precision fire to disable the vessel's engine, a decision rooted in doctrine because it targeted mobility rather than lives, shifting the operation decisively from pursuit to control and placing the Seahawk at the center of the outcome, as the helicopter repositioned with deliberate restraint to establish a clean line of sight on the engines, the air crew studying speed, wake, and angle to select the precise moment when action could be taken without unnecessary risk. The cabin door opening as the gunner completed system checks against wind and vibration at low altitude, tracking the vessel's subtle course changes that demanded constant correction, waiting for the narrow window when aircraft motion and engine alignment converged, and then the controlled burst struck true, sparks flashing as smoke bloomed from the outboard, power collapsing instantly as the wake flattened from violent churn to sluggish ripple, transforming a fleeing go-fast into a drifting hull in seconds. Rotor noise now dominating the silence as the vessel slowed to a stop, its occupants raising their hands in visible compliance as escape vanished, while the helicopter maintained overwatch to ensure no attempt was made to restart engines or discard remaining material, feeding the USS Sampson a stabilized picture that allowed the surface phase to begin with confidence, the Seahawk tracking drift, floating packages, and sea state as the operation transitioned cleanly from interdiction to capture, culminating in the launch of two RHIBs that surged away from the Sampson at speed, crews shifting into visit, board, search, and seizure posture, adjusting formation to approach from opposing angles and create a controlled envelope around the disabled vessel, their movements precise and measured as transit gave way to boarding readiness, because at this stage even a small misstep could turn control into chaos, and the final outcome now rested on discipline, timing, and the seamless handoff from air dominance to surface authority. The boarding team leader tracked the ladder's position with precise focus, spacing each movement so no operator climbed too fast or broke formation, while the steady thunder of the helicopter overhead reinforced a silent assurance that the scene remained fully contained, allowing the team to concentrate on control rather than threat, stepping aboard one by one and immediately flowing into positions that isolated the suspects away from the vessel's edges in accordance with VBSS doctrine, a method built on deliberate pacing because speed without discipline creates risk, and once aboard the commands came firm and unmistakable, voices calm but absolute, met by immediate compliance as the suspects positioned themselves to be restrained without resistance, their cooperation stabilizing the scene and reducing escalation as the team documented physical condition, demeanor, and behavior for investigative continuity, noting men in their early to mid-30s visibly strained by the chase. A rapid psychological collapse that underscored how decisively control shifts once mobility is removed, after which the team initiated a systematic sweep of the vessel to identify hazards and confirm no additional individuals were present, revealing a hull marked by neglect, irregular maintenance, missing safety gear, and clear regulatory violations. While engine damage from precision fire confirmed the vessel's complete loss of propulsion and eliminated any remaining flight risk, the deck itself bearing residue consistent with discarded cargo that matched earlier aerial observations, reinforcing the evidentiary chain as the absence of registration markings, communication equipment, and structural integrity aligned with long-range narcotics trafficking profiles, prompting the team to photograph critical components and catalog identifiers to build a legally airtight record linking the vessel's condition to actions observed during pursuit, a process that transitioned the mission from seizure to recovery as surface control enabled recovery teams to deploy from USS Sampson into surrounding waters where narcotics had dispersed, moving deliberately as shifting currents complicated retrieval, guided continuously by helicopter overwatch that directed teams toward concentrated clusters of floating veils. Each package tagged immediately to preserve chain of custody as long-handled tools drew them aboard RHIBs, where varying buoyancy and drift demanded constant adjustment. There. Weight becoming undeniable as the first loads came aboard, compressed cocaine consistent with long-haul trafficking, until all 47 bales, totaling approximately 3,439 pounds, was secured in reinforced containers to prevent contamination. The estimated $58 million wholesale value underscoring the scale of the disrupted network, while inconsistent, sealing revealed rushed or improvised packaging that matched the earlier chemical reaction observed in the water, providing investigators with critical linkage data across shipments. And once recovery was complete, the vessel was formally classified as stateless, placing it fully under international maritime authority and enabling transfer of the 2 detained suspects into federal custody under U.S. maritime drug enforcement protocols, marking the legal handoff phase of an operation whose significance extended far beyond the arrests themselves. As the seizure severed a major Eastern Pacific trafficking route and demonstrated how lead enforcement, radar, infrared, aviation dominance, and disciplined surface teams can collapse sophisticated smuggling attempts in minutes, sending a clear signal that maritime space remains contested and that when criminal networks adapt, American interdiction adapts faster. Because at sea the balance of power can shift instantly, and on this morning, it shifted decisively.